Good evening, Excellencies, delegates. Please take your seats so that we may begin. Good evening, delegates. Kindly take your seats. We are about to begin the formal session. This is the first part of the closing plenary. If you could take your seats so that we can begin.
I declare open the fifth meeting of the COP. Dear delegates, we have a text and we need to agree on the text. The time for discussion is coming to an end, and there is no time for hesitation. The time to decide is now. Yesterday, I called a Changemakers Majlis, and there was a new tone in the room and a new spirit of collaboration, openness, engagement, cooperation, and positivity. And I saw a new level of commitment, a new energy, and a new sense of commitment. I also saw a new sense of urgency. I saw people starting to come out of their comfort zones, and I saw them really engage with each other. That said, we must still close many gaps. We don't have time to waste. We must deliver an outcome that respects the science and that keeps 1.5 within reach. When I stood here in front of you as the newly elected president, I asked you to approach this COP with a different mindset and to be cooperative. And I also asked everyone to be flexible. You showed exactly that mindset and that flexibility by taking the historic step of operationalizing the loss and damage on day one. Together, we have the opportunity to deliver history again. We can send a signal to the world that multilateralism does actually work, that this process can respond to what the science is telling us, that it can deliver for the most vulnerable and keep 1.5 within reach. We need to focus everyone on closing out the toughest issues that continue to remain. I need all parties to show even more flexibility to get us to the finish line. The world is watching. Let's not rest until we get this done. Esteemed delegates, yes, we have made progress, but we still have a lot to do. You know what remains to be agreed, and you know that I want you to deliver the highest ambition on all items, including on fossil fuel language. If I can help, my door remains wide open to all of you. You have already shown what a different mindset and a flexible approach can deliver. Now, we must all work much faster, much smarter, and we have no option but working together. We must work collaboratively, and we must work together. And we shouldn't allow for anything to get in between the fact that we have all decided that we will stay laser focused on our North Star. Let's keep that focus on our North Star of keeping 1.5 in reach. I thank you. I invite the COP to consider Agenda Item 2H, adoption of the report on credentials. In accordance with Rule 20 of the draft rules of procedure being applied, the Bureau has examined the credentials and submitted its report. The report on credentials is contained in document FCCC/2023/10-FCCC/PA/CMA/2023/14 and FCCC/KP/CMP/2023/8. Based on the report of the Bureau, I invite the conference to accept the credentials of parties attending the session contained in document FCCC/CP/2023/10, Hearing no objection, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider sub-item 2B, adoption of the rules of procedure. You may recall that our first meeting, I proposed that Mr. Ahmed Al-Ghardaqa, a senior member of my delegation, hold consultations on this issue. I thank Mr. Ahmed for taking on this task. While there was an appreciation of the importance of this matter, delegations still maintained their positions on the fundamental issues. As such, I regret to inform the conference that there was no consensus on this matter. I therefore propose that the COP continue to apply the draft rules of procedure contained in document FCCC/CP/1996/2 with the exception of draft rule 42. I also propose that the COP continues consideration of this matter at its 29th session. Hearing no objection, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider Agenda Item 2G, dates and venues of future sessions. You may recall that at our first meeting, I proposed that consultations on this matter be concluded by Ms. Hana Al-Hashmi, a senior member of my delegation. Based on the consultations, a draft decision is presented for adoption by the COP. I invite the COP to adopt draft decision entitled Dates and Venues of Future Sessions contained in document FCCC/CP/2023/L.4, and hearing no objections, it is so decided. I'd like to thank Ms. Hana Al-Hashmi for her work. I would also like to recognize Ms. Tina Koblesk and Ms. Eneida Rodeshta, the chairs of the Eastern European Group, for their tireless efforts and their continued engagement. I have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Mukhtar Babayev, Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources, to address the plenary on behalf of the government of Azerbaijan, the host of COP29. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Dear Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored and humbled by the opportunity to address this esteemed gathering of the 28th session of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Our sincere gratitude goes out to the Convention Secretariat and the host country, United Arab Emirates, for their tireless efforts in organizing this extraordinary event. The challenges we face demand collective action and dedication to the commonly agreed objectives and aspirations. Azerbaijan understands the critical importance of collaborative efforts to combat climate change. Strong political will demonstrated by the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan and the support by other Eastern European Group member states to Azerbaijan's nominations to host COP29 have been crucial in today's success. We extend our deep appreciation to the countries of the Eastern European Group for their decision to endorse Azerbaijan as a host country for COP29. The valuable support from the countries in the group once again reflects a shared commitment to unifying our efforts to fight climate change and building a better future for all. Our commitment to sustainability is not mere promise, but its reality reflected in our national policies and actions. I am delighted to announce Azerbaijan's eagerness to host COP29. Azerbaijan, with its rich cultural heritage and dynamic energy, will be a fitting stage for the global community to come together once again to tackle the pressing issues of our time. We extend our appreciation to the current presidency for their guidance and support during COP28. We are committed to closely collaborating with the United Arab Emirates and Brazil, the host country for COP30, to ensure a seamless transition and continuity in our shared efforts. We recognize the importance of coordinated global response to climate change, and through joint initiatives, we aim to amplify our impact and accelerate progress toward a sustainable future. In conclusion, let me express my deep gratitude to all participants, organizers, and the host country, United Arab Emirates, to the COP28 President, Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, for their dedication to the cause of climate action. Let us carry the momentum from COP28 forward and work together to ensure that COP29 in Azerbaijan becomes a symbol of hope and progress in the global efforts against climate change. Thank you.
This is Azerbaijan, a land where the East embraces the West. Ancient and modern cultures collide, a bright and diversified world. Every stone holds a great history. A fusion of various cultures takes place. And the region is abundant with magnificent works of art which are engraved in our history. It's a land enriched with traditions and national wealth, paving a path towards a hopeful and prosperous future. Here, the old Silk Road has left a profound and lasting impact. A heaven nestled between the majestic Caucasian mountains and the vibrant Caspian Sea. This is the place for those who believe in the bounties of nature, cherish the blessings bestowed upon them, and seek miracles in every corner. A land of untold legends waiting to be discovered. Endless green forests, icy waters, sunny fields, and bonfires that burn eternally. A land of peace, covered with the cool embrace of Kazri and warm whispers of Gilavar. This place is like a beacon, illuminating hope for tomorrow, where living in harmony with nature is a way of life. Hospitality thrives in this land, where friendly and triumphant people reside. It's a land where fresh ideas are born and diverse experiences open doors to fascinating and innovative ideas. And with its vast experience and untapped potential, Azerbaijan stands ready to contribute to a sustainable future. Join us at COP29.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Congratulations, and we look forward to working very closely with you in preparing for the sessions next year. I now have the honor to give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Marina Silva, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change of Brazil, to address the plenary on behalf of the Government of Brazil, the host of COP30. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Senhor Presidente, agradecemos às partes pela confiança demonstrada ao Brasil quando nos delegam a responsabilidade de sediar a COP30. Agradecemos ao Grupo da América Latina e Caribe por ter indicado o Brasil. É com grande satisfação que informo nossa decisão de realizar a COP de 2025 na Amazônia brasileira, um bioma essencial para conter o aquecimento global. A COP30 será realizada na cidade de Belém, capital do estado do Pará. Sabemos que a COP30 será chave para a definição das novas NDC, que até lá serão apresentadas e que serão fundamentais para que possamos alcançar a missão de 1,5 graus. Estou especialmente tocada pela indicação da Amazônia, onde nasci e cresci para receber esta conferência. A Amazônia é um símbolo vivo da semente que plantamos na Rio 92, uma região onde é evidente a conexão entre as 3 convenções que assinamos naquela ocasião: a Convenção da Biodiversidade, a Convenção Quadro de Clima e a Convenção sobre Desertificação. A Amazônia nos mostra o quanto as convenções estão entrelaçadas nos seus desafios, mas também nas soluções sinérgicas que abarcam. Agradecemos a presidência da COP28 por sua hospitalidade e pelo senso de urgência que insta em todos nós para que saiamos daqui com resultados concretos, não só no tema de perdas e danos, mas também no balanço global, incluindo o que temos e todos esperamos. Uma decisão que nos conduza à construção coletiva de uma nova matriz energética que o planeta e a humanidade demandam para a sua sobrevivência. Uma matriz caracterizada pelo acentuado aumento das fontes renováveis de energia e a simultânea redução da dependência dos combustíveis fósseis. Saudamos a escolha do Azerbaijão como país anfitrião da COP29. Sabemos do desafio que lá teremos com a necessidade de alinhamento dos temas de financiamento e meios de implementação, as ambições de mitigação que podem nos levar ao desafio de 1,5 graus. Entendemos nossa responsabilidade de caminharmos juntos da Estrela do Norte para o Cruzeiro do Sul dos céus da Amazônia. Muito obrigada.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and congratulations to Brazil. I invite the COP to return to Agenda Sub-Item 3A, Report of the Subsidiary Body for Scientific and Technological Advice. I thank Harry Vroels, Chair of the SBSTA, for the important results that the SBSTA has delivered, on which he reported at our 4th plenary meeting on 8th December. The SBSTA recommended a decision for consideration and adoption by the COP under this agenda item. I invite the COP to adopt the draft decision entitled Sixth Assessment Report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, contained in document FCCC/2023/4/ADD.1. Hearing no objection, it is so decided. I invite the COP to return to agenda sub-item 3B, report of the subsidiary body for implementation. I thank Ambassador Nabil Munir, Chair of the SPI, for the important results that the SPI has delivered, on which he reported during the fourth plenary meeting on 8th December. The SPI recommended a decision for consideration and adoption by the COP under this agenda item. I invite the COP to adopt the draft decision entitled Linkages between the Technology Mechanism and the Financial Mechanism, contained in FCCC/SPI/2023/10/ADD.1. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider agenda item 4, reporting from and review of parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention. This matter was considered by the SPI. I'd like to inform the COP that the consideration of this matter could not be completed by the SPI at this session, and that matter will be included in the provisional agendas for SPI 60 in accordance with Rule 16 of the draft rules of procedures being applied. I invite the COP to consider agenda item 5, reporting from parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention. This matter was considered by the SPI with regard to information contained in national communications from parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention. I would like to inform the COP that the consideration of this matter could not be completed by the SPI at this session, and that the matter will be included in the provisional agenda for its next session in accordance with Rule 16 of the draft rules of procedures being applied. With regard to provision of financial and technical support for reporting from non-Annex 1 parties, the SPI agreed to continue consideration at SPI 60. With regard to the summary reports on the technical analysis of biennial update reports of non-Annex 1 parties, the SPI adopted conclusions at its closing plenary on 6 December. I invite the COP to consider agenda item 6, report of the Adaptation Committee and review of the progress, effectiveness and performance of the Adaptation Committee. These matters were considered by the SBSTA and the SPI. I'd like to inform the COP that the consideration of these matters could not be completed by the subsidiary bodies at this session, and that the matters will be included in the provisional agendas of SB 16 in accordance with Rule 16, SB 60 in accordance with Rule 16 of the draft rules of procedures being applied. I invite the COP to consider agenda item 9, development and transfer of technologies and implementation of the technology mechanism, joint annual report of the Technology Executive Committee and the Climate Technology Center and Network. This matter was considered by the subsidiary bodies, and a decision was recommended for consideration and adoption by the COP. I invite the COP to adopt the draft decision entitled Enhancing Climate Technology Development and Transfer through the Technology Mechanism, contained in FCCC/SB/2023/L.9. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider agenda item 10, capacity building under the Convention. This matter was considered by the SPI, and 2 decisions were recommended for consideration and adoption by the COP. I invite the COP to adopt the draft decision entitled Annual Technical Progress Report of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building for 2023, contained in document FCCC/SPI/2023/L.18, and draft decision entitled Terms of Reference for the second review of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building, contained in document FCCC/SPI/2023/10/ADD.1. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. In addition, I invite the COP to consider the other draft decision entitled Terms of Reference for the second review of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building, contained in document FCCC/SPI/2023/10/ADD.1, and to recommend it for consideration and adoption by the CMA. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider Agenda Item 11, matters relating to the least developed countries. This matter was considered by the SPI. I'd like to inform you that the SPI adopted conclusions at its closing plenary on 6 December. I invite the COP to consider Agenda Item 13, Gender and Climate Change. This matter was considered by the SPI and the decision was recommended for consideration and adoption by the COP. I invite the COP to adopt draft decision entitled Gender and Climate Change, contained in document FCCC/SBI/2023/L.17. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider Agenda Item 16, Administrative, Financial and Institutional Matters. I invite the COP to consider Sub-Item 16A, Budgetary and Financial Matters. This matter was considered by the SPI and two decisions were recommended for consideration and adoption by the COP. I invite the COP to adopt the draft decision entitled Administrative, Financial and Institutional Matters, contained in document FCCC/SBI/2023/10/ADD.1, and the draft decision also entitled Administrative, Financial and Institutional Matters, contained in document FCCC/SBI/2023/L.14/ADD.1, as orally amended by the SPI 59, at its closing plenary, to remove the reference to FCCC/SB/2023/INF.12 revision 1 from footnote 2. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider sub-item 16B, decision-making in the UNFCCC process. At the first meeting of the COP, I proposed consultations to be conducted by Mr. Omar al-Breiki, a senior member of my delegation. I would like to thank Mr. Omar for his work. He informed me that the parties agreed on the importance of this issue, but there continues to be diverging views. This matter will therefore be included on the provisional agenda of the next session in accordance with Rule 16 of the draft rules of procedures being applied. Delegates will now convene the fifth meeting of the CMP. This meeting of the COP is adjourned. I declare open the fifth meeting of the CMP. At this meeting, the CMP will consider draft decisions recommended for adoption by the CMP. The order in which the agenda items will be taken up is posted on the screen. I invite the CMP to consider Agenda Item 2D, approval of the report on credentials. In accordance with Rule 20 of the draft rules of procedure being applied, the Bureau has examined the credentials and submitted its report. The report on credentials is contained in document FCCC/CP/2023/10, FCCC/KP/CMP/2023/8, FCCC/PA/CMA/2023/14. Based on the report of the Bureau, I invite the CMP to accept the credentials of parties attending the session contained in document FCCC/CP/2023/10, FCCC/KP/CMP/2023/8, FCCC/PA/CMA/2023/14. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the CMP to consider Agenda Item 3B, Report of the Subsidiary Body for Implementation. You may recall that the SPI, at its closing plenary meeting, recommended that the CMP take note of the report of the Administrator of the International Transaction Log under the Kyoto Protocol, contained in document FCCC/KP/CMP/2023/6. I propose that the CMP take note of the report. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the CMP to consider Agenda Item 5, matters relating to the Clean Development Mechanism. I invite the CMP to adopt draft decision entitled Guidance relating to the Clean Development Mechanism, contained in document FCCC/KP/CMP/2023/L.2. I hear no objections. It is so decided. I invite the CMP to consider Agenda Item 8, Capacity Building under the Kyoto Protocol. This matter was considered by the SBI as reported in document FCCC/SBI/2023/10 and CORR.1. I invite the CMP to consider Agenda Item 11, Report on the High-Level Ministerial Roundtable on Increased Ambition of Kyoto Protocol Commitments. At the first meeting, I proposed that informal consultations be conducted by Ms. Iman Ustadi of my delegation. Unfortunately, I have to report that there is no consensus on the way forward on this issue. Pursuant to Rule 10C and Rule 16 of the draft Rules of Procedure being applied, this item will be included on the provisional agenda for CMP 19. Hearing no objection, it is so decided. I invite the CMP to consider Agenda Item 12, Administrative, Financial and Institutional Matters. The SBI recommended 3 draft decisions for adoption by the CMP under this agenda item. I invite the CMP to adopt the draft decision entitled Administrative, Financial and Institutional Matters contained in document FCCC/SBI/2023/10/ADD.1. The other draft decision, also entitled Administrative, Financial and Institutional Matters, contained in document FCCC/SBI/2023/L.14 and /ADD.2, as orally amended by SBI 59 at its closing plenary to remove the reference to FCCC/SBI/2023/INF.12 revision 1 from footnote 3. The draft decision entitled Budget for the International Transaction Log, contained in document FCCC/SBI/2023/10/ADD.1. I hear no objection. It is so decided. We will now convene the 5th meeting of the CMA. This meeting of the CMP is adjourned. I declare open the 5th meeting of the CMA. At this meeting, the CMA will consider draft decisions recommended for adoption by the CMA. The order in which the agenda items will be taken up is posted on the screen. I invite the CMA to consider agenda item 2D, approval of the report on credentials. In accordance with Rule 20 of the draft Rules of Procedure being applied, the Bureau has examined the credentials and submitted its report. The report on credentials is contained in document FCCC/CP/2023/10, FCCC/KP/CMP/2023/8, FCCC/PA/CMA/2023/14. Based on the report of the Bureau, I invite the CMA to accept the credentials of parties attending the session contained in document FCCC/CP/2023/10, FCCC/KP/CMP/2023/8, FCCC/PA/CMA/2023/14. Hearing no objection, it is so decided.
I invite the CMA to consider agenda sub-item 3A, report of the subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice. You may recall that the chair of the substaff, Harry Bruce, reported on the work of the SABSTA at our fourth meeting last Friday. The SABSTA recommended a draft decision for adoption by the CMA under this agenda item. I now invite the CMA to adopt a draft decision entitled Sixth Assessment Report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, contained in document FCCC SABSTA /2023/4/Addendum 1. Hearing no objection, it is so decided. I invite the CMA to consider agenda item 7, reporting and review pursuant to Article 13 of the Paris Agreement, provision of financial and technical support to developing country parties for reporting and capacity building. I invite the CMA to adopt a draft decision entitled Reporting and Review pursuant to Article 13 of the Paris Agreement, contained in document FCCC/PS/CMA/2023/AO2. Hearing no objection, it is so decided. I now invite the CMA to consider agenda item 8, matters related to adaptation, sub-item B, report of the Adaptation Committee and review of the progress, effectiveness, and performance of the adaptation. I would like to inform the CMA that the consideration of these matters could not be completed by the subsidiary bodies at this session, and that the matters will be included in the provisional agendas for SB 60 in accordance with Rule 16 of the draft rules of procedures being applied. I invite the CMA to consider agenda item 11, development and transfer of technologies and implementation of the technology mechanism. Joint annual report of the Technology Executive Committee and the Climate Technology Center and Network. On this matter, the subsidiary bodies have recommended a draft decision to the CMA for consideration and adoption. I invite the CMA to adopt the draft decision entitled Enhancing Climate Technology Development and Transfer to Support Implementation of the Paris Agreement, contained in document FCCC SB/2023/AO10. Hearing no objection, it is so decided. I invite the CMA to consider agenda item 12, capacity building under the Paris Agreement. This matter was considered by the SBI. In addition, as you have just heard, the COP has recommended that the CMA adopt a draft decision entitled Terms of Reference for the second review of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building. I invite the CMA to adopt the draft decision entitled Annual Progress Report of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building, contained in document FCCC/SBI/2023/AO19, and the draft decision entitled Terms of Reference for the second review of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building, contained in document FCCC/SBI/2023/10 at 1. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the CMA to consider agenda item 16, administrative, financial, and institutional matters. I would like to propose that the CMA endorse the decision adopted a short time ago by the COP entitled Administrative, Financial, and Institutional Matters as contained in document FCCC SBI/2023/10 Addendum 1. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Dear delegates, this brings us to the end of the meeting of the CMA. The meeting of the CMA is now adjourned.
Thank you very much. The meeting is ended.
what is withdrawal of energy. No message on the clear phase out of fossil fuels and many things that we are still missing in the final test that he has tabled this afternoon. So still much work to do.
Yeah, I mean, let me add to that and let me first of all echo that. So let me echo that and let me add to that what the Minister just said. And I cannot hide the fact from you that the text as it now stands is disappointing. It is lengthy, we're still looking into all the various elements, and yes, there are a couple of good things in there, but overall it is clearly insufficient and not adequate to addressing the problem we are here to address. And that is not because just we want it, the Minister or I want it, or the Europeans want it, because scientists are crystal clear about what is needed. And on the top of that list is phasing out fossil fuel, because there is a direct causality between doing that and making sure we get the Earth, we get people out of harm's way. So we have to continue the conversation, but this text contains elements that we simply cannot accept.
Lo digo en español, sorry.
That's better that you do that than I do.
Creemos que este texto es insuficiente y de hecho hay elementos que son inaceptables. Echamos de menos aquellos conceptos, aquellas orientaciones que nos permitan lo que se necesita salir de esta conferencia, lo que se necesita obtener de esta conferencia. Una senda clara sobre lo que debe hacer el sector de la energía para asegurar un declive rápido de las emisiones. ¿Cuál es el papel de la energía y los combustibles fósiles? No solamente en el horizonte 2050, también en el horizonte de 2030. ¿De qué manera garantizamos su progresiva reducción hasta su eliminación? ¿De qué manera garantizamos que el acceso a energía, nuevas infraestructuras es compatible con lo que nos exige la ciencia, con lo que nos exige garantizar ese horizonte de seguridad climática que nos marca el que la temperatura no crezca por encima de 1,5 grados? Es obvio que seguiremos trabajando, pero creemos que aquí hay muchos elementos que son simplemente inaceptables.
¿Ve imposible un acuerdo con esta base de partida?
Veo muy difícil que podamos llegar a una solución mañana a las 11 de la mañana como le hubiera gustado al presidente, pero también nos mantenemos dentro de lo que el presidente dijo desde el primer momento. Tiene que ser una COP que se convierta en un punto de no retorno, en un punto de referencia en esta década crítica y por tanto nos queda evidentemente mucho trabajo que hacer para poder trabajar, para poder garantizar junto con las demás partes que el escenario final sea un escenario viable y plenamente congruente con el mensaje que queremos dar.
The topic, just to add to that, the topic simply is too important to not do everything we can to continue the conversation and make sure we do get in there what is right.
What is that?
So that means that we will talk as long as necessary, and we will do our utmost as the European Union to arrive at what the world needs, what the planet needs, and what also the next generation of people from across the globe actually expect from us.
What tools do you have left to convince these oil-producing countries to give that up, to let that wording into the text?
You know, these things are never over until they're over, and you've heard statements from others. You know just as well as I do, because you've been walking around here, that there is a great majority of countries who actually want and demand more in terms of phasing out and in terms of what is in the text and in terms of getting rid of coal and in terms of making this decade the decade in which we show the most urgency. And that is a group of countries spanning from Latin America to Africa, to the small islands, to the Europeans and many of our friends in North America and Asia as well. And it is up to us to make sure that these voices are being heard and that this is solved in the next day or the next days or however long it's going to take.
So who is hijacking this COP? Who's hijacking this COP?
We want to have 1.5 being the safety space that we need to ensure. So of course we are going to fight for 1.5. I think that the current test provides some reference to science. It provides some reference to 1.5, but then it is not consistent when dealing with energy. So I think that we need to get into deeper discussions, conversations with many other partners, but of course also with the president who is leading these negotiations.
So who is hijacking this COP?
Is the EU rejecting this text outright? Are you rejecting this text?
Well, we have been clear what we think about the text in the last couple of minutes with you. And we will also convey that message to the President. And yes, you know, this is a text ranging over a number of pages. And, you know, we're studying all parts of that in every detail. And yes, there are elements in there that are good, for example, on energy efficiency and on renewables. But if you look at what is at the very heart of this conversation, and we've had that conversation for the last couple of days, it's about fossil fuels and how we deal with them. And there we've just given you our statement that we think that this is clearly insufficient.
Are you worried about the text getting weaker?
No.
Well, I mean, we've just said where our bar is vis-à-vis this text, so it's pretty clear what we would think when we go even lower.
Is it possible to get fossil fuels back, phase out back into the text?
We have days, hours, or days if necessary ahead us. We would like to leave this COP with the clear messages that the world requires. So for the time being, we are not in that position. We want to get what we came here to fight for.
Porque no hay mención expresa al fin de los combustibles fósiles.
Creo que hay que esperar porque creo que debemos negociar a fondo. Este texto obviamente tiene elementos que son positivos, pero tiene un gran fallo en la gestión de los mensajes sobre energía en esta década crítica. Me parece que no es momento para decir si nos vamos o no. Nosotros vamos a luchar por lo que creemos que es necesario hacer. Por tanto, no contemplamos el escenario de marcharnos. Sí contemplamos el escenario de que a lo mejor tenemos que quedarnos más tiempo del que pensamos.
What will it take to make this text sufficient? You say it's insufficient. What will it take to make it sufficient?
Well, it's basically the elements we just touched upon. Right? It is making sure that we articulate that this is the decade in which it needs to happen, with 2030 as a first clear moment in time. Making it specific on phasing out fossil, making it specific about how the world should treat coal, and also making it specific that yes, we cannot end fossil fuels from today to tomorrow. And we do know that for part of the solution space, you would need abatement techniques for the hardest to abate sectors. But that should not be misunderstood, that for the bulk, for the vast majority of our emissions, we have no alternative than to drive them down and out ASAP. So that is at the heart of the conversation the two of us and all of you have had in the past couple of days, and that is in the end what we should judge the text upon.
Is Sultan Al-Jaber showing his real face?
So one moment, please.
Is Sultan Al-Jaber showing his real face here?
Well, I don't know. I'm sure that he's having difficulties to see how he can provide a test that convinced to everybody. And that's for sure, that it could take much time, much energy, and much leadership. So we will be reflecting where we think leadership should be, and we hope he can understand this leadership. But I'm sure that there are many countries thinking that we can still work with in a fossil fuel world, but science says that this is not the case.
If this text was the deal, is 1.5 dead?
We have no alternative than to continue the conversation and making sure that we arrive at keeping 1.5 alive. And again, talk to anyone from the islands and tell them and ask them what 1.5 already means today.
Okay.
Last question.
That seems like a good place to stop to me, I think.
You're the boss, Tim.
And everybody's gone quiet.
I'm sure we see each other again.
Yes.
My flight out is on Friday.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Nada, que se te va bien, te lo he ido...
Non, mais je comprends, j'avais mal au bras aussi, je faisais pareil sur la
Yo te lo he ido...
Oui, merci, vous, j'allais vous chercher. Merci, c'est très gentil.
Allez.
No, si se van tengo a uno. I have no idea. That's the big holiday. I got to be the girl person, but
can make a deal.
Yeah.